Chapter 721. Repurposed. Dominic quickly realized that waiting for someone else to prepare the airships was not a time-efficient choice. They were already warships, they had just been modified with the removal of their masts to replace them with the rigging for the lifting envelope. So, when he wanted to convert them back, he just had to pull the nails that held the old cannon ports locked shut and make new cannon blocks. Then, he could make a new set of cannons, for per side, and equip the ship with a munitions orb. Then, they were ready for a crew, and to begin the patrols. Only, Westover currently didn't have any trained airship crews, and they didn't have enough full-time soldiers to start sending whole teams out in airships to patrol the duchy. He was going to have to hire some more people. Giving the militia all spears was a great idea, but without a standing army, they didn't have anyone who could devote their weeks to being on patrol. A full loop of the duchy in these airships would take about 4 days if nothing went wrong, so he could have an airship pass overhead every day, or he could assign each of them a region. He would have to put that to the advisors. But before he could put it to the advisors, he had a guest outside his office door, lingering. "You know that I can't hear you out there, right? You might as well come in," he called. The guest opened the door, and Dominic was surprised to see that it was one of the trolls from the Sand sect. "How can I help you?" "Take a seat. Have you eaten yet?" The troll bobbed a nervous curtsy, then nodded. "Yes, Your Grace. I just came with an update. And, I'm not sure how you're going to take it." Dominic laughed. "Don't worry, I don't hold a grudge against the messenger. What's happened?" "I came to do the checkup on the princess. And well, there is a minor little tiny issue." "Which would be?" "You see, dragonkin, like trolls, only have a 3-month gestation." "Oh, she's going to murder me." "Probably yes." "So, how far along is she?" "It's been close to 2 months. Don't tell me that she's only got a month left." "She's not that big yet." The troll giggled. "No, I don't think it's that bad. You've got about 6 weeks left." Dominic sighed. "And that means in a couple of weeks she's going to start growing rapidly and will be going on bed rest. Which means more work for me. Well, for Julio, since I fully intend to foist it on him. We're actually recommending light activity restrictions now." "She didn't take the news well." "No, I don't imagine that she would have." "Did you try telling her that it meant she could get back to training faster?" "I ran away when she started throwing pillows." Dominic laughed, and the trollish midwife shrugged. She knew that Alexis would calm down soon, but until she had it out of her system, there was no point in staying to be the target of her anger. There was nothing valuable to break in the spare bedroom that was being used as an examination room. "So, 10 minutes before we get snacks and go see her? I'll come back you up." "But aren't you unusually timid for a midwife?" The troll smiled. "I'm used to trollish fathers. They tend to get excitable and don't take bad news well. The princess might throw pillows at me and try to crush my hand with her grip, but an angry forest troll father might throw the desk at me. Just because I can heal from it doesn't mean that it didn't hurt." Dominic nodded. "I suppose that's a good reason to be skittish. After all, Dave could toss you halfway across the yard if you gave him bad news. Fortunately, I am somewhat more docile." The midwife gave him a disbelieving look, and Dominic shrugged. "Believe what you will. I'm sticking to my story. Is there anything that you need me to do?" The troll nodded. "You need to come with me to make sure that she understands that bed rest is important, even though it's going to be 6 weeks. She might have some magical blood, like all Signian royals do, but not enough of it that her body is going to have an easy time growing a child so fast. She'll be exhausted all the time, and her muscles will struggle to adjust. Then there are the cravings. I don't know what having a dragonkin baby is going to make her crave, but it won't necessarily be edible. That happens to trollish mothers. If your mother was here, we could ask her for the specifics, but as she isn't, we're going to have to guess. Do you have any strange food preferences that might be passed down?" Dominic thought back to when he was a kid and frowned. "Dragonberries. When I was young, I craved them all the time in pies, pastries, even straight off the bush." The midwife nodded. "They're pretty wonderful."
"Wait.
"That's a problem if she starts craving them. At least it would be a quiet day." That made the troll laugh. "As true as that might be, it's not good for the body. Gordy, the acolyte that Asmodane, the former Archmage of Kynwyn Academy, had sent to Westover, knocked then entered the room. "I'm afraid that we have more unfortunate news for you," he began. "All right, get to it. Then I can prioritize what comes first." The mage took a deep breath to steady himself, then blurted out the response, as if saying it faster made it easier. "Lord Asmodane sent the Royal Guard class graduates back to Westover, and the Guard commander wants to know how your wife liked his wedding gift. But none of us have any idea what he's talking about, and he's probably going to strangle me to death." Dominic laughed. "Tell him that he forgot to sign the letter. He's likely the one that sent the princess her new storage ring. Is he perhaps an accomplished mage?" Gordy collapsed to his knees in relief. "Oh, gods, I hope that was him. Yes, he is almost as powerful as that old necromancer. I don't know how to deal with him. He's intense. Please come save me." Chapter 722. Wavemates Guards.
"All right. First we go see the guardsmen.
Then I will bring the commander to see the princess. She is quite fond of his gift, and she won't murder us in front of guests." The midwife laughed as she followed them down the stairs to where a large group of men in gold robes under polished black armor were standing rigidly at attention, while the royal guard watched them with cautious eyes. "Guards at attention," the commander declared unnecessarily. "At ease. Welcome to Westover. I am informed that this is the most recent graduating class of royal guards, and their commander? Unfortunately, I don't know your name." Dominic greeted them. "Don't have my name? I believe that you forgot to include it or anything about yourself on the wedding gift that you delivered," Dominic elaborated. The commander turned, and one of the young soldiers looked mortified. "Well, then I can make a proper introduction now. I am Commandant Benedict Kynwyn, the youngest son of the Baron of West Kynwyn River, though I was born in the Beast Realm after Inquisitor Asmodane relocated the primary branch of the Academy. My father is the Chief Combat Skills Instructor, and I was to be his successor before I was promoted to Royal Guard Commandant. It might be a bit late to ask this, now that I've already come to your world, but you haven't chosen a guard retinue, have you?" Dominic laughed. "Well met, Commandant Benedict. No, I haven't chosen a royal guard of my own. The ones you see here are the royal guardsmen assigned by the king to Princess Alexis, who is incredibly fond of the wedding gift that you sent her, by the way. Perhaps you would like to meet her while the two units get to know each other?" "That sounds wonderful. I'm sure that they will get along splendidly. The Signian Royal Order were considered legendary by the elder generation when I was growing up. Compared to our Battlemage Order, I'm certain that they are an entirely different fighting force." That was not something that Dominic had expected. The Wavemates Royal Guards were mages who took the path of a knight? That was relatively unconventional, as it seemed like the two would interfere with each other. They typically had different focuses. One on strength and agility, one on magical power and mental focus. Dominic led the group up the stairs, and gestured for one of the veiled maids to go warn Alexis that they were coming so that she was ready before they knocked at the door. Catching her by surprise when she was already in a bad mood was a bad idea. They waited halfway down the hall until the maid knocked from inside, and then approached and waited for the guards to open the door. "Husband." Alexis greeted him icily, well aware that he was here to convince her to go on early bed rest. "Alexis, love, you're looking positively radiant. Not even going to pretend that you're here for something else?" "Nope. But I have someone to introduce to you. This is Guard Commandant Benedict Kynwyn, son of the Baron of West Kynwyn River, born in the Beast Realm and dispatched here by Lord Asmodane of the Kynwyn Academy. He is the one that sent you that lovely ring and forgot to sign his name to the delivery." Commandant Benedict sighed. "Your Highness, my apologies for the misunderstanding. It appears that my assistant neglected to send the cover page for the delivery. I am overjoyed that you received it intact and appreciated the design. It was commissioned for the occasion, but I wasn't sure what fashion in the region dictated, so it might not have been suitable for daily wear." Alexis held up her hand, which was proudly displaying the ring, and the Commandant smiled. "You are forgiven for the oversight, but might I ask what brings your detachment here? Is there some threat that I was unaware of?" Benedict shook his head. "No, Your Highness. It's just that the first class graduated after Westover was reclaimed, and the headmaster determined that they should be assigned to guard the last royal in this world. So, I was promoted from instructor to commandant, and here we are. So, it is simply Asmodane looking out for us from wherever it is that he's calling home now. Alexis asked skeptically. I can see how it would make very little sense to someone without any frame of reference, but it's part of our charter. Loyalty to the Wavemates bloodline is instilled into all of us from birth. But more importantly, we've got trolls with us. Do you have any idea how insanely loyal trolls are to their oaths? It hasn't even been a full generation since most of us left for the other world. My father served most of his life as a baron west of the capital. Nearly 200 years. That sort of history doesn't end in a mere decade. Alexis looked nearly as startled as Dominic felt. It was just a relief that Benedict was facing her, not him. Your father was a baron for 200 years? Benedict nodded. Close to it anyhow. He took over from his father at 25, and his father retired to the other world to join Lord Asmodane as an administrator at the academy, much to the former king's annoyance. Then, from that point until 30 years ago, he served as the Baron of West Kynwyn River until the territory was subsumed by the city, and his title became ceremonial. Without a territory to look after anymore, he found himself aimless and chose to take on a life as an adventurer in the beast realm. He's quite accomplished, though I doubt that his titles would mean anything here. Alexis nodded. And how does someone live that long? It's quite a stretch for even a dragonkin to live 200 years and still be siring children. Benedict laughed. Oh, dragonkin never really give up on that, right until they die of old age. But no, my father is an elf. My mother is a dragonkin from Lord Asmodane's extended family line. Chapter 723. Why they moved. I really do need to hear the full story behind this other world, and why there is a Wavemates National Academy there, or whatever you are calling it. It's clear that you're all still loyal to the Dragon King's lineage. But if there is such a strong force, why are they in another world? And why are you only now returning? You said it's because there was a graduating class after Westover was retaken, but you could have come to collect Dominic or assist him at any point in the past. Alexis demanded. Lord Asmodane is our highest political authority, and in his opinion, a king needs to take his territory on his own. If Lord Dominic had decided to gather an army and go to war to retake Wavemates from Dagos, we would have sent troops to support him. But sending bodyguards to protect a child would have prevented him from growing as he needed to, in the opinion of the headmaster of the academy. Benedict paused, then continued his explanation. The academy was set up to hide the fact that so many sorcerers and others live an inordinately long time. The humans were getting a bit too stabby about the fact that some creatures like the bog witches, elves, and some others live for more than 1,000 years. It was safer to relocate the majority of the civilized non-humans to another location, and none of the continents on this world were suitable. There are still some here, obviously, but all the older and more powerful ones relocated. It was also due to the limited mana levels in this world. For someone like me, it might slow my growth, but other than that, it's hardly noticeable. For others, it's nearly crippling. Many of the Fae species had to flee back to their own realm centuries ago. The dragons just got sick of the shorter-lived species and left. That's how we ended up on that particular world. There were a number of dragons that were on good terms with the Dragon King, and they let us set up on the world they had populated as a game preserve. You could call it a living pantry, given the dietary preferences of the dragons. But they call it a game preserve. As it is, there are no real threats there, no nations that might go to war, and enough magic that natural disasters are highly unlikely, even if the region where we built had a history of them. It doesn't. For non-humans, it's an ideal spot to be, and I suspect that for the two of you, perhaps just for Lord Dominic, if my estimate of your lifespan should be a bit off, it will be a fine spot for retirement. That's the trap that the Dragon King ran into, and the one that his old friend the Necromancer King is stuck in. If you stay in power too long, everyone forgets how to operate without you. And then that becomes a threat to everyone with power. Now, the old man was about done with living, and that was his choice. But for most, the logical option is to step down and hand the titles and power to the next generation. We've got plenty of history that tells us why it's a bad idea to serve so long that you pass over entire generations of children or even grandchildren. The ones who eventually get the power won't appreciate it, and they're too disconnected from the upbringing to be considered proper heirs. That's less of an issue for a dragonkin, who might still be having children at hundreds of years old. But it will cause chaos among his children if he wants to hand the title off to someone with a century less experience than some of his other heirs. Alexis nodded slowly. So, you're saying that you expect Dominic to live long enough that the king will want him to step down and pass down the title, long after I've passed? Benedict shrugged. Probably not much longer than you. Dragonkin get a bit maudlin when their bonded mates die, and don't usually last much longer unless they find a new purpose in life. But a noble lady's body undergoes some changes when she is carrying a child, and when that child is more dragon than human, the changes can be significant. Now, I don't expect you to grow claws, though it is possible. More likely, because there is already magical blood in the Signian royal family line, you'll see a longer than usual lifespan. Much like the techno-witches and some others with high magic levels do. If you've got an old troll or an elf here in town, they'd know better than I do. Alexis shook her head. I think that the oldest person in town is Pops, and he's a dwarf. Benedict smiled. Dwarves are a curious species. It's nearly impossible to tell if they're drunk or sober. Assuming you can find them before they've started drinking for the day, that is. The guard commandant brushed his long hair back, and long ears popped out from underneath, highlighting the non-human lineage just as surely as Dominic's horns did. But that wasn't what Alexis had focused on. You said, when the child is more dragon than human. Why do you think that the child is more dragon than human? I've seen dragon eggs, and they're enormous. Plus, they're like crystalline stones. The timeline. Dragonkin have shorter gestations when they've got more dragon blood. Their natural healing abilities allow them to grow faster in the womb. If they're particularly powerful, the whole process can be as little as 2 months, and let me tell you, there is nothing quite like seeing a belly visibly grow every day. It's a bit freaky. Dominic chuckled. That sounds like personal trauma. I take it you have siblings? Indeed. 5 of them still living. Some of the older ones remained here when my father left, and they were lost in the war. But I've seen the process more than once because my father has strong healing magic. Right, elves were supposed to have excellent healing and nature magic affinity, much like the trolls. Chapter 724. History of the Guard. So, your academy and the surrounding city are full of a wide variety of ancient and magically powerful non-humans. Alexis asked, looking for clarification. Benedict shrugged. I don't know if I would call it a wide variety. It's mostly dragonkin, elves, and trolls. There are some dwarves and other magic users, but they're a small minority group. The dwarves and the dragons have issues getting along. They're more alike than they would like to admit, and it leads to constant arguments between them. So, the dwarves don't usually go to dragon-run worlds. Alexis nodded. That's a lot to take in. An entire retirement planet for old magic users just tucked away and waiting for more people to get old and come to them. Only, I suppose there haven't been any for a while, since so many were killed in the invasion. Benedict nodded. Indeed. I only know of the event from classwork, as I was a teacher. But it didn't directly affect us. We weren't even in the same world. The only ones that took a real hit were the new graduates who were hoping for a posting in the Royal Guard, and then found out that it was temporarily disbanded. At one point, there were 10,000 of them, you see. That many guard cycles through a huge number of elite graduates every year, far more than our small academy can provide. But we have the best training and the best skilled battle mages. So, it was fairly common for them to get a posting on the royal family's personal retinue at some point during their career. I was led to believe that the Signian royal family is also quite close to their royal guards, and often has the same set for the guard's entire career, never wavering from their assigned post. Alexis smiled. I have had one replacement since I was a child. The original commander of my team retired and passed the spot to Colonel Wilkes, while Ella was promoted out of the Royal Order to my personal guard. It's good to see that there is a woman on your retinue. I was a bit concerned that we had 2 of them in our unit and no information on how you personally felt about ladies in combat. Now that I've met you, I can see that concern is unfounded. You see, when it is noted that a royal family member is an officer of a militant order, it usually doesn't mean that they are part of the order, just that they hold the title. So, I didn't know for certain that you were a paladin. I did know that you greatly enjoyed reading as a youth. That was recorded before the fall of Wavemates, but the last entry was when you were 9 years old, and preferred fantasy novel reading with your second brother to anything except chocolate cake. Alexis was again left stunned by the random information that other nations collected. You knew that I was a bookworm and that I loved chocolate cake, but not that I was a paladin? Did nobody do any research before sending you here? Benedict shrugged. I'm certain that they did. When I asked about the proper gift for your wedding, they had a clear and detailed list of likely choices. However, my unit was to be assigned to the Duke, and they didn't see fit to inform us of your hobbies. I do know that you greatly dislike being flirted with. But that was never going to happen, as you're a married woman, and I'm not that sort of fellow. What sort? Suicidal? But I was referring to the sort of gentleman like in that second book from the left on the top shelf on your side of the bed. The sort of noble knight who, ever so graciously, assists his lady when her husband is out of town. Now, I dare say that Duke Dominic is not the same sort of husband that the protagonist in that novel is. But you know the sort I mean. Alexis laughed. I do, and I'm thoroughly shocked that you know the book. Benedict shrugged. Once upon a time, I thought that reading ladies' romance would help me understand the fairer sex. It did not. Dominic snickered, and Alexis rolled her eyes. You are looking in a very wrong direction if you are hoping to understand the core essence of a woman's personality by her choice of erotic literature. Well, I know that now. However, being that I am the strapping and handsome knight archetype, despite technically being a battle mage, one can hold out hope. Dominic smiled at him. I see that we have a hopeless romantic here. Though, if your taste in books matches my wife's, I'm not entirely certain that romance is the word that I should be using for it. That reminds me, I have books for you. Not of the fictional sort. I brought a number of mage training tomes, basic spell books, and other educational materials that I am informed were mostly lost years ago in this region. Alexis smiled as the books were brought out and stacked high on the end table in the room. That is wonderful. We have 2 mage sects in town who are running academies based on their own specialties, but I know that both are missing large portions of the knowledge that they would like to be teaching. I don't suppose that you are informed of the reason that this region is missing so much historical and magical knowledge, were you? Benedict shrugged. I had assumed it was due to the more or less constant warfare. When cities get sacked, records get lost and rare tomes vanish, either for safekeeping or in fires. Well, that is moderately true. Your headmaster Asmodane burned or looted a huge amount of the continent's history before he left. So much, in fact, that he's still on multiple nations' most wanted lists centuries later. That definitely sounds like something that he would do. Old dragons have their pride and despise being questioned. Chapter 7:25. Integration. Alexis rose from her chair and smiled at Benedict. Why don't we go meet the rest of your unit? They're going to be spending a very long time here in the manor if Dominic has accepted them as his royal guard. So, it's in everyone's best interest to see that the 2 forces get along. Benedict nodded. I believe that you'll get along well with the team. They are all top performers from the Academy's training program, but grades aren't everything. They were specifically chosen by the teachers for their ability to work together as a cohesive team. The midwife helped arrange Alexis' clothing before they left the room, ensuring that there were no wrinkles from sitting for an extended time. Downstairs, the 2 guard forces were beginning to get along well, and they had moved out into the yard to show the new arrivals around the essential areas. They would need to learn the layout of the building as soon as possible, and there was a lot of building to learn when you included the courtyards behind the main manor, as well as the underground tunnels. They would get to those later. Are there any signature spells that I should know about before we meet with the team? Alexis asked. There are a few that the Wavemates Royal Guard all know. One is the Uniform Disguise spell. When active, they will all look like one of 2 people, either a male or female Royal Guard. It's quite useful in general situations, as it allows us to lift our visors without being recognized as anything more than a guard. They are battle mages, so there are naturally quite a few combat spells that they all know, but the signature spell of the guard is Wing Blast, which creates a huge rush of wind magic that can be used to throw enemies back, or to help get us into the air. You can fly? I mean, yeah. Not because I have wings, all battle mages know flight magic of some sort. The extra wind blast throws us into the air to get a faster start or to intercept incoming targets. It is a wonderfully useful magic when used properly. But more importantly, it's a non-lethal spell. I don't know how much you know of the previous Dragon King's policies, but he was strictly pacifist. Now, that didn't end well for him when he was surrounded by human nations that were not pacifist. Not for his nobles, either. Men who had become too complacent after centuries of peace within the kingdom were unprepared or unwilling to fight back, thinking that Dagos would spare the commoners. But that's not the point. What I'm trying to say is that pacifism has shaped much of the policy of the Wavemates Royal Guard training. We have developed many skills that are intended to delay, hinder, or restrain, without killing. In the last decade, many combat skills were reintroduced, with an added focus on practical combat instead of ceremonial. But the old traditions were never removed, so we have many ways to keep the peace. Alexis smiled. That is actually going to be quite useful. Mages who can restrain troublemakers lead to prisoners who can be questioned later, instead of bodies and guesses about their intentions. Benedict smiled. Well, I am a personal disciple of a former Lord Inquisitor. I also have spells and skills to get answers out of even the most reluctant or magic-resistant prisoners. Alexis nodded. The Royal Guard insignia is trained with similar techniques. What they lack is a reliable way of bringing in prisoners alive. The effort to capture them without allowing them to self-destruct is the hardest part of getting to the truth of things. If you truly have a reliable method for securing traitors, the entire nation will come to thank you for it. Benedict nodded. It is quite effective, and when they are fully restrained, they can't even bite down on poison pills hidden in their mouth. When they can't end their own lives, there is no option but to answer. Alexis led the way to where the two groups of guards were currently discussing the details of the walls with Dave and the other Daves. I see that everyone is settling in well. Was there anything that we needed right away?
She greeted them.
No, Your Highness. We've got everything well in hand now. The new guards have been shown their dorms, and we've nearly finished the tour of the manor. All that is left is to discuss the usage times for the training grounds and to introduce them to the rest of the city. Alexis nodded. That can wait. They will meet with the locals the next time that Dominic goes out. Until then, it's better not to reveal their identities to the people of Westover. Mystery is part of the Royal Guard experience, after all. Benedict nodded. We also disguise ourselves while working, so even if we go out into town now, nobody will recognize us the next time that they see us. It would be a bit counterproductive to introduce us to everyone as the Royal Guard. In a larger palace, we usually pose as common palace guards when we're in our own faces. Only when we're disguised will we be fully uniformed as the Royal Guard. Colonel Wilkes seemed confused, but the guards weren't going to transform here in the open where anyone could see. Not knowing who was under the disguise was the sole purpose of the spell. If only one of them did it, what would even be the point? All right, if you've got this all handled, I need to have a long talk with my dear husband. It appears that he has been willing to side with that treacherous midwife and is on the verge of suggesting something stupid. Alexis insisted. Dominic sighed. Wish me well, brothers. If I don't make it out of this discussion alive, know that it is wiser not to ask your future wife to go on bed rest. The guards laughed at Dominic's solemn tone, and Colonel Wilkes gave him a crisp salute. Farewell, brother. May you heal rapidly. Chapter 726. Bed rest. Dominic followed Alexis back into the house and into their room, where he immediately decided that the best option was to sidetrack her from her anger about being told that her body needed bed rest. You think that being naked for this conversation is going to help your case? I think that it's going to help me convince you to get into the bed. Alexis smiled, despite her annoyance. I'm not an invalid. I'm just pregnant. There is no reason for them to all be treating me like I'm made of glass. You're a princess, pregnant with the heir to the duchy, and everyone is feeling super protective of you. Could you go about almost all of your daily activities? Sure. But would it risk causing complications with a baby? Apparently the midwife thinks so, and she wants you to start taking things easy, with the little one growing so fast. Dominic leaned forward to plant a row of kisses up her neck, and Alexis hummed happily before stepping away. You're getting too good at distracting me. I'm going to have to play harder to get. Dominic laughed. Why would you have to when you've got these damned buttons? If I wasn't on good terms with your seamstress, I would cut them all off with a claw. Dominic complained as he deftly unbuttoned the back of her dress. It's not even lunchtime yet. Leave my clothes alone. I will have them leave lunch on the side table. Doctor's orders, bed rest. Which means I now have a perfectly good excuse to get you out of your clothes. Outside the door, Benedict and Colonel Wilkes shared an incredulous glance. Should we activate the soundproofing? Benedict asked. Probably. We already know when they want lunch, and that they're going to be unavailable for the rest of the day. Benedict chuckled as he activated the spells on the ducal suite. They're quite a pair. Are they always like this? No. Sometimes it's worse. But mostly they're being kept too busy to take a day off and just stay in bed. You're going to have to reschedule some advisor meetings and paperwork for him. That's usually the duty of the Royal Guard, as he doesn't have an assistant. He's governor of 2 provinces now and the Duke. So, there is no shortage of paperwork for him to do. Then there are the complaints and business reports. Not a lot of time left in the day for them to spend alone, if you know what I mean. Enough, it seems. But I have spells for everything that you listed. I can sort paperwork into categories without reading it myself, detect forged and fraudulent documents with reasonable accuracy, and then I just need to prioritize. The academy is pretty thorough, and I was a teacher, so I learned a bit of everything. I'm not as powerful as most of the other instructors are, but now that I'm back here, it's not going to matter as much. This world struggles to support higher level magic, and I've already got a mage class skill core at level 25. Plus, I mix blood, so even without that I can use magic at a fairly decent level. It's been a real blessing, especially with all the strange spells that they wanted me to learn for teaching the trade skill classes. Wilkes smiled. Does that mean you have the essential spells for a guardsman? He held up his canteen, and Benedict chuckled. I can do water, wine, ale, mead, and cream gravy. The Royal Guard blinked slowly. There is a spell to make cream gravy? Just add grilled sausage and biscuits. It's considered an essential travel spell where I come from, since milk doesn't store well, even in storage spaces. You see, while a storage ring keeps things stable, they will either come out the temperature they went in, or at ambient temperature. Neither of which are good if you want to use fresh milk for most things. Chilling it is an essential step for making whipped cream and custard. So, the fresh milk gets chilled for sweets and the spell is used to make breakfast so you don't waste the milk. There is something strange about the logic of your world. Probably, but there are strange things here as well, by my reckoning. I can teach some of these spells to your mages if you keep some on staff. Or, I can create spell gems for the ones who don't want to memorize them. We had a mage back home who could memory transfer spells, bringing the learning time down to under an hour, but that's not a spell that I ever mastered. I suspect that it might be a racial ability. The Duke recently got the spell to make wine and ale, but he hasn't had a chance to fill the manor storage. I don't suppose that your team knows it as well? Benedict nodded. We do. Did you want me to send someone to sanitize the storage barrels and fill them? Typically, it would be house wine and mead. Ale is for dwarves. Wilkes frowned. You don't like ale? I'm half-elf. I prefer sweet liquors and wines. But it was always the Wavemaid's tradition to have honey mead here because dragonberry wine is toxic to humans, but honey mead from bees that pollinated the dragonberry plants carries a unique flavor, but none of the sleeping toxin. The colonel looked intrigued. If you can replicate that with a spell, I'm certain that both the staff and the guests will appreciate it. Just ask them not to go too high level on the house wine. It encourages people to drink far more than they really should. Benedict whistled, calling one of his team members upstairs. Send someone to the basement to sanitize and fill the wine vat, standard house wine at level 5. Then fill a few barrels of dragonberry honey mead. I doubt that the staff here has ever tried it, because they probably don't know that it's safe to drink. And I'm not certain if there are beekeepers in town. He instructed. There are beekeepers, but I don't know if there is a formal brewery for mead. At most, they're likely making some at the inn. That's a shame. I will talk to the Duke tomorrow about expanding the production. The guard who had come for the mission frowned. Tomorrow? Sir, we have a list of tasks for today. I will take care of scheduling. The Duke and Duchess are indisposed, and are expected to remain indisposed until after dinner. Please inform anyone who needs to know. Also, please ask the kitchen to have lunch sent up at whatever their usual time is. The Duke and Duchess will be eating in their suite. Chapter 727. Soundproofing Matters. Benedict and Wilkes deactivated the soundproofing at dinner time, and then reconsidered calling the Duke and Duchess down to eat. Instead, they had the veiled maids bring the meal up to them, along with a larger folding table to hold the side dishes. It was not the easiest way that Dominic had ever gotten out of a day at work, but it might have been the most enjoyable. Enough so that the entire staff had to hide their amusement at the happy smile on his face as he came down for breakfast the next day, still sporting faintly visible claw marks on his exposed lower arms. All right, what is on the agenda for the day? I put off yesterday's meetings, so I'm sure there is plenty, he greeted Alistair as the advisor took a seat next to him at the table. Nothing out of the ordinary. The soldiers are still making their way through the baronies, with no major crimes or arrests reported. The airships reported nothing out of the ordinary as they flew over the provinces, but the number of beasts near the summoning array is said to be higher than usual. Perhaps it was a higher density spawn, or an oversight in the search pattern of the cleanup teams. Other than that, your new royal guard sorted and organized the documents for you, so you can go through them at your leisure. I must say, they are proving to be quite popular, especially with Castel and Julio. That magic they have for sorting through documents by origin and urgency is quite the innovative use of the spell. It can actually tell what is false, or political doublespeak, and what was written by someone who finds the topic genuinely urgent. Oh, now that is something that I did not know. Do you think that it's going to save time? Alistair nodded. Not only can you do the most important things first, you can also save the ones that you know are false for analysis later, instead of trying to decipher the politics in them while you have other things to do. They also have agreed to work with the accounting team to use their magic to check numbers. You see, the one known as Benedict was a teacher, and he has magic for grading papers. It will automatically point out mathematical errors. Jenna, the chief accountant and financial advisor, sat down beside the mage with a sigh. The problem is that it doesn't fix the math, it only tells you if it is wrong. I don't even know how that could possibly work, but it does every time, even when it's not intentional. We tested it with airship blueprints from a version before revision, and it found all the math issues they later corrected after testing, and a miscalculation of the structural integrity that we had noticed. Fortunately, after recalculating, it's stronger than anticipated, so no design changes were made. Dominic nodded and continued to eat. That was excellent news. They now had a magical calculator for their accounts. It was a strange magic, not powerful in the conventional sense, but so utterly and completely indispensable that nobody would want to be without it now that they knew it existed. He fully expected that Rill would be here soon, begging to get a copy of the spell gem. Julio was a loyal member of their staff, but he was also a member of the Merchants Guild, and magic that calculated numbers in a ledger were precisely the sort of thing that they would pay an exorbitant amount for. At least, until they had it and could make copies for their branches. Well, I'm certain that the airship designers will be happy to know that the error was in their favor. How have things been with the harvest for next month? I know that we have been receiving shipments from the baronies now that their storage facilities are getting full. The farmers view it as food aid for the commoners, and they're happy to help where they can. The barons have been giving them a discounted price for it, as they're all short on cash as well, but the people are happy to help. Most of the ones who came from the provinces already know what it's like to be under Dago's rule, and they wouldn't wish worse than that on anyone. So, you're not going to get too much anger at the transfers. At least not this year. Given that you'll be paying for a decade, I'm sure that it will set in eventually, especially as it's paying for Kynwyn province, but the payments aren't coming from Kynwyn. That's going to grate on them if we can't afford to pay them market price for the crops. Fortunately, the farmers only get a small portion of retail if they're selling for shipment by the guild, so we can give them a discounted price. Though, from what I can see in the reports about the Trollish village, we might not need to worry about it. They've got even more potatoes growing this time than last time, and they've somehow found more trolls. I don't even know where they came from. There was no report of them arriving, but the official report counts far more of them in the fields than there should be in total, and none of them were in the robes of the mage sect, so they're likely all from the village. Well, that should probably have been expected. The trolls are all looking to come back to the old Wavemates territories, and I'm actually thinking of holding a special place for them in Kaimun province as well. The southwestern portion of the province, west of Skipton River, has always been pretty desolate. Not great for crops, too far from anything to have a population more than a few kilometers from the river. I think that it would be a great region for trolls to make new settlements. They don't like being too close to the humans if they can avoid it, and we can just send portals or airships to gather resources from them. They'll happily pay in crops for tenancy, and then we can use that to pay Dagos. That sounds like exploiting tenant farmers. Dominic shrugged. If I don't charge them taxes, they're getting the good end of the deal. Chapter 728. Uncomfortable Breakfast. The weeks began to fly by in a blur of work that had Dominic moving all over the city. He had to ensure that the deliveries made it to the Merchants Guild, that the factories were working smoothly, catch up on all the paperwork, and try to keep his wife from going insane as it became increasingly clear that the midwife was right about bed rest. By the time that she was down to only 1 week from her estimated due date, the stairs had become an issue, with her muscles struggling to adapt to the rapid changes, and Alexis was most definitely into the not-happy portion of the pregnancy process. "What are you laughing at? I'm the size of a house, and I can't even see my feet." Dominic leaned over and kissed her forehead. "I was just thinking that we might need to revise the family plan. That dress looks good on you. I am going to murder you with a spoon." Even as she said it, a slight smile curved Alexis' lips. It had become a running thing between them in the mornings. She was having an increasing hard time physically getting out of bed and actually needed the assistance of her staff some days, but he would be unerringly sweet about it, to the point that it just looked ridiculous to yell at him. The staff hid their smiles as they set out breakfast and waited patiently to see if Alexis would send anything back. For some reason, she had a sensitive stomach lately, as if the child only wanted very specific foods. She had been trying everything to curb the cravings, not wanting to have to do intensive physical training after the birth to get back into her armor. But nothing was working. She hadn't actually gained an excessive amount of weight, all things considered. But with the intense physical conditioning that she did under normal circumstances, she felt every single kilo that she gained as a personal affront to her years of training. Why couldn't it be the men who carried the children? She knew that it was illogical and that she really should eat this oatmeal for breakfast. But she was just illogically angry this morning and frustrated that she couldn't go out to the training grounds and take it out on the royal guards. Annoyed with her situation, Alexis sighed and then reached over and stirred a spoonful of peanut butter into her oatmeal. At first, Dominic thought that it was a mistake, but as he smelled it, he realized it wasn't actually a bad idea. A bit like a peanut butter cookie. She was looking uncomfortable, but that was nothing new these days. The little one was not so little anymore, and it made everything awkward. Then, a massive cramp rippled across her abdomen, making her scream in agony. "Doc," Dominic called, summoning the trollish midwife. The stout woman grabbed the princess and carried her up the stairs to the treatment room, then began issuing orders to the veiled maids, while the royal guards were rearranged to block the ends of the hallway, as well as the windows of the rooms of the outside of the house. The room she was in had an interior window, overlooking the grand hall. It was shut tight right now, but that didn't matter to Dominic's hearing when the door was open. He didn't know that he could be insulted in so many different ways. Dave poked his head into the room from the kitchen. "Aren't you going to go outside? I'm pretty sure that pacing back and forth in the yard is the tradition for men at this time." Dominic chuckled. "She can yell at me just fine from here. I've heard that some wives like to crush their hands during childbirth, especially if she is delivering early. So, it's probably best that I don't wander too far away." Dave shrugged. Trollish fathers paced in the yard. That was their spot. Another midwife rushed into the manor with a quick curtsy for Dominic before she ran upstairs with an armload of something wrapped in cloth and a veiled maid right behind her. "Lad, pacing in the dining room isn't any better than doing it in the garden. Why don't we sit down and have a coffee? In my experience, these things take some time. Half a day, or more for the ones my wife managed. Jack Merlot insisted. The other advisors gathered and led Dominic to the sitting room on the main floor, overlooking the garden. They had been blocked from wandering the hallways this morning and couldn't get to their offices, so they had little else to do except join the Duke in waiting for his heir. They likely could have negotiated with the royal guards to be escorted past. They were trusted residents of the building, but protocol said that when a princess was giving birth, only a limited number of people were allowed nearby, and they all had to be approved. Even the most trusted of advisors might still be working for another faction, if they were within the royal palace. And the official rules didn't have an addendum for family members who were living elsewhere. Plus, the Wavemates family rules were very similar, but had a few more clauses about preventing baby swaps, as that had been attempted many times in the past, with other noblewomen or servants hoping to get a good life for their child, and knowing that the young royal would eventually grow into their birthright. They had just settled into the comfortable chairs of the sitting room when Rill, the Merchant Guild branch leader, came in, escorted by one of Dominic's new royal guards. Well, it appears that I have horrible timing. I have official receipt of the second monthly quota allotment, and a request from the King of Dagos for particular items to be sent next month if possible, he explained. No, it's perfect timing. We all needed the distraction. Come and sit, grab a drink. Dominic insisted. The merchant smiled as Jack Merlot poured them all a glass of mead, his drink of choice at breakfast. How long has it been? Rill asked. Just now. I would imagine we have some time ahead of us yet, so there is no harm in doing a bit of paperwork first. Chapter 729, The Wait. There was very little paperwork getting done in the sitting room. Sure, there was lots of it laid out so that it looked like they were busy. But everyone was either too excited or too nervous to focus on actually reading and signing the documents. Dominic was trying, he really was. He had all the documents that were tagged as urgent, time-critical, or military set out on the table, and he was slowly making his way through them. However, his hearing was exceptionally sharp, and he was no longer certain that all the epithets that his wife was placing upon his name and lineage were in any known language. He did think that he had heard one in the ancient magical tongue not long ago, but hopefully that curse wouldn't stick. Lunch was brought out at some point, telling Dominic that it had been about 5 hours since breakfast, and he was through all the paperwork that was truly urgent. That left 3/4 of the day's work, and normally, he would have been done by now. But most of this could wait for tomorrow, or he would get a similar update to it again tomorrow. Rill prepared to depart right after lunch, urgent business calling him back. I will be sure to send the princess a gift tomorrow to celebrate, but I simply must get those shipments out of my warehouses. The farmers of Westover Duchy have been far too generous with their shipments for the Dagos relief effort, and I've still got to arrange portals for the trollish donation. I swear, if this keeps up, nobody else in Signia is going to have to donate anything at all to the King of Dagos. It will all be coming from Westover. And that's after I've already sent 3 convoys this week toward Castle City and Darden, loaded with food. If the production numbers keep up at this rate, things are quickly going to get out of hand. We can export a lot of food, but the yields are twice what would seem reasonable for the amount of land that has been planted. They've overfilled all their storage, and it's causing prices to plummet. The market price in the city is less than half what it was a month ago. That might be good when you're looking to pay bills, but the farmers still need to make enough to keep their homes afloat. They're doing twice the work planting and harvesting for the same profit at these prices. The only advantage is that they have traded for everything that they can get into their pantry, and nobody will be going hungry, or even eating wild vegetable soup before the next harvest. Dominic laughed. Well, if there are buyers in other cities, we will just have to work on our export abilities. The more that we can move out of the region, the higher the prices will stay, while still being a discount compared to what the prices are elsewhere. I'm sure that you can work something out. Rill sighed at the Duke's faith in him. Sure, he likely could come up with something, but he was trying to imply that there was no need to encourage the farmers to keep up this rate of production. Induced scarcity was better for the market, and it would drive up the prices everywhere that they traded to. At this rate, he would have to keep finding new markets so that he didn't collapse the price of potatoes, corn, and beans all over the region. They also had an excess of oats and barley, but those were still being stockpiled in the city for later. They were popular as animal feed as well as human. So if the price dropped too far, they would just start feeding the excess to the goats. Another thing that Westover was quickly gaining too many of. The trolls had to be doing something to increase the birth rates of the goats. There simply shouldn't be so many of them in the region, according to the math that he had done on the imports. Dominic poured another glass of wine, then paused as the sounds upstairs went suspiciously quiet. Quiet was suspicious. Either things had gotten bad enough that they had activated the soundproofing, or there was no energy left for cursing his name. Dominic knew that the trolls had given her powerful painkillers. They had potions specifically for the purpose that were assured to be safe for the baby. He had even purchased them in advance, simply picking every possible option they presented him, just in case it was needed. If it wasn't, they could either keep it in reserve, assuming it had the shelf life, or they could donate it to someone who needed it. After a few minutes of silence, Dominic heard the door open and the tap of the royal guard's boot heel on the hardwood, a common signal to each other that something was about to happen. So, he put his drink down, which alerted the others that something was up just before one of the veiled maids entered the sitting room. "If you would like to come up and meet your daughter, they are ready for you now." The advisors patted Dominic on the back as he left, following the maid up the stairs. The woman's face was hidden under her veil, but Dominic could see nerves in her posture. She was very nervous about showing Dominic to the newborn, or perhaps about Alexis' reaction now that he was back in the same room with her. She had been quite adamant that she would never forgive him for this experience only a few minutes ago. After all, the maid was a younger woman, with no children of her own. So, this was the first time that she had experienced a live birth, and she wasn't entirely certain that the trolls were correct about Alexis forgiving Dominic by morning. "Your Grace, may I present to you your firstborn daughter, Princess Katerina Alicia Josephine Wavemates." Chapter 730. A New Princess. Dominic stared down at the tiny face, wrapped in a soft white blanket. The first thing that he noticed, other than the shockingly blue eyes and blonde hair, were the small golden horn nubs on her head. Unlike his own, they sat further back on the sides and seemed to be designed to grow backward. That would be convenient, as she could braid her hair around the horns, making them part of her style. His daughter would never need to hide her lineage. The blanket rustled, and Dominic saw small golden wings push up behind her head, right before the little one's face scrunched up and she sneezed fire. Actual dragon fire. Dominic laughed as he reached down and plucked his daughter out of the arms of the horrified trollish midwife. "Sorry about that. It used to happen to me as well. But on a positive note, I can only do it once a day, so it's unlikely to happen every time she sneezes." Baby Katerina smiled at Dominic, and for a moment, he was certain that she could actually see him and understood who he was. A ridiculous notion for a child who was only minutes old, but he was already smitten. This creature was adorable. "Excellent work, wife. She's absolutely magnificent. Nearly as pretty as her mother." "Only nearly? Well, she is half me, so it's inevitable that she couldn't be as lovely as you are." Dominic replied with mock sympathy for the little one, who was giggling hysterically as she kicked her legs in the swaddling. Alexis smiled as she watched Dominic gently bounce their daughter. He was born for this, she could tell. That little girl was going to be one of the most pampered princesses in the entire world, and with her as the mother, she would have every opportunity open to her, not just the usual route of a political marriage and running a noble household. That was everything that Alexis had dreamed of when she was little, even before all the creepy noblemen came calling for her and her sister. In a way, she was overjoyed that her first daughter was not a twin. She would likely kill someone for doing to her daughter what was done to her and Josephine when they were younger. So many vulgar insinuations. Alexis was much more concerned about the future of her daughter than Dominic was. His only apparent concern was whether the little one would keep breathing fire when she sneezed. She was making the face like she was going to. But when the full body shudder came, it was an explosion of a different sort that needed to be remedied. And that's my cue to pass this happy disaster to someone else. Too good to change a diaper? I don't even know where they are. The troll laughed, and then cast a spell that brought a basket full of materials flying her way. "Well, Your Grace, I believe that visiting hours are nearly over. The princess is exhausted. There is no danger to her or the little one, and we will call you if that changes. Dominic nodded. Call me if the fire issue continues, and I will have a charm made. My old one was damaged, but I can have the witches make a new one for her. Actually, I will just do that now.
She's going to need it.
I have a strong feeling. The maids were in a panic getting everything ready and cleaned. By royal decree, there was a whole list of things to do during and after a royal birth, and one of them was to send a sample of the child's hair to the palace, so that the mages there could verify that the child was indeed a royal. In the past, it was not uncommon that someone might try to swap the child, or to replace a stillborn with a commoner's child without telling the mother. So, the palace instituted checks to verify that the child was royal, and they were still alive within the building where they were supposed to be. It might not stop all swaps, but it helped. In this case, it was unlikely to be an issue. There weren't many other children in the world that could be passed off for little Princess Katerina. The horns made things much more difficult for any attempted baby swap. Dominic just made it back to the sitting room when he heard more swearing in the birthing room, and then the door slammed open. Duke Dominic, you need to come take your daughter. Dominic chuckled. So she was his daughter. Already. She was born to be a handful. What he found when he got upstairs was one very angry baby who was much more mobile than expected, at least in the arms, courtesy of one shredded blanket. Tiny blue eyes glared at him, then at his chest. I can't fix this one. She's hungry. She's got claws. Understandable. I too will happily shred clothing to get to those titties. Alexis rolled her eyes, while Dominic searched through his storage cube. There were many keepsakes in there that he had claimed when he left home, and he hadn't looked at them in years. But as he recalled, yes, there they were. A small pair of leather mittens that tied around the wrist. There we go. No clawing at your mother. Good girl. The midwife smiled. Those are a great idea. We could use them for troll babies too. Mostly we just ignore it, since we heal so fast. But troll claws are soft when they're little. These are harder. It's an emotional thing. They'll soften when she's calm again. We might end up having to write a whole new parenting book, though. I haven't seen one on raising dragonkin children. I'm certain that there is one. There are so many books in the library here that don't have proper labels or titles that there is bound to be relevant information in one of the local manor's histories. Who knows, it might even be about you. Alexis joked, absolutely exhausted. I certainly hope not. It will just scare you unnecessarily. I was a rambunctious child.